So in this video, we want to talk about the three things that you need to be prepared for in regards to terminating somebody, and some of the things that you should already be talking to your employee about before you even get to the termination discussion. So let's jump into those three things. The first one is behavior. Behavior is one of those things that's really hard to define in a policy, but at the same time, you can be as explicit as you would like. But the thing is every policy should be open-ended to say, while this policy is descriptive in these certain matters, we can't come up with all the situations, but we give the HR department the discretion to determine if this behavior is outside of what's considered acceptable and what's considered unacceptable. Behavioral expectations normally should be covered in the code of conduct. The code of conduct is kind of like an all-encompassing area or policy within your organization that should at least guide employees to what they should see as acceptable conduct within the organization. Believe it or not, behavioral is one of the harder things to try and fix because you're talking about a person's personality. You're talking about the way that they operate, and it's just within their DNA. So trying to change a person's, conduct is not necessarily one of the easiest things. But that's why you have progressive disciplinary issues that come up and, progressive disciplinary actions that you can go through with this person. But to me, it shouldn't be any sort of shock to this person when you're having a discussion with them about their behavior. I have a very simple way that I handle things, and I hope that you do the same, that if a person has behavioral issues, you should be addressing that with them from the very beginning. Now, of course, some things are isolated incidents and you can handle those as they come just with simple verbal conversations. But if it becomes a little bit more disruptive or a little bit more of a recurring pattern, perhaps it's time that you start engaging in a conversation with this person to be more along the lines of what can we do to help you get past this and to be able to control your anger or however you're handling it. Those are important things. You should never just sit there and think, hey, this person just should change because I think they need to change. It's no different than if your kids do something wrong, you want to address it by talking to them. It's the same exact thing. While I'm not a parent, I understand that it's important to talk to somebody and to say, hey, I think it's important that we have a conversation about what you need to do to improve. And you should be very clear with them about what that expectation is. If you're not clear with them, they won't understand what they need to do. You can say, well, we don't allow people to curse in the environment, and you're cursing a lot. So you should not be cursing at all. If you curse again past the day, we're going to have a more formal conversation where we start to discipline you or write you up. And then we're going to go through the progressive disciplinary process with you. If it's just a bad attitude, that's hard to kind of coach a person out of, but you want to do what you can to give that person every opportunity to fix it, to say, you're a little bit negative, and I think it's important that we work on ways for you to improve that or to withhold the urge to express it the way that you're expressing it. It's not that we want to say that you won't have those feelings within you or the anger within you, but it's important that you don't display that and don't push that outward to other coworkers because people recognize those things. So that's one of the first pillars is behavioral. Attendance is the next one. Now, this one's pretty simple. Hopefully, your organization has a very clear attendance policy that explains exactly what needs to happen, what time the person needs to show up for work, what happens if they don't show up to work, how many absences are they allowed, how many specific, tardies are they allowed. Some organizations move to a point system. Point systems are a lot more objective. Therefore, everybody's on the same scale. Everybody's measured on the same scale, so it's not considered discriminatory. The one thing that you can say, and the one argument that can be made, is that if you just start writing a person up because they're absent and writing up a person because they're late to work, you're not really digging into the root problem. You're not really asking questions to figure out why are they late? Why exactly were they 15 minutes late? Why are they a half an hour late every day? Or why are they missing work? Sometimes they don't want to tell you the reason, but you can instantly say, if it's regarding a healthcare situation or if it's regarding a health situation, then maybe we need to have that discussion now. So if the person's worked a certain period of time, one of the things I knew is that if a person was telling me they needed to take off of work to go see the doctor, or they're sick on a recurring basis, or their kid's sick on a recurring basis, one of the things that I would do is I'd say, look, I've looked at your employee file and I noticed that you're eligible for FMLA. So I'm not saying this is an eligible FMLA reason, but maybe we need to start going down that path to have you check with your doctor, or to check with your kid's doctor, or your spouse's doctor, or your parents' doctor, to maybe see if this is something that you can be covered under Family Medical Leave Act. Because again, you don't want to fire somebody or discipline somebody for a reason that could be protected under the FMLA. And it could even be an ADA situation too. So you don't want to exclude somebody just because they show up late to work or they're missing work. But on the other hand, if there's not a viable medical reason that the person's late for work, to me, it should be very clearly laid out in the attendance policy. And your attendance policy should guide you in exactly what you should do. But you have to be very, very clear with this, and you have to be consistent with this. So no matter what you do, you always have to discipline people, whether you want to or not. Even if it's your best performer that keeps showing up late to work, you have to treat them the same as you treat everybody else. The moment you start veering off of this path and start doing things inconsistently, if you're ever brought in front of a court of law, the jury, if they have a jury, or the judge could easily call into question anything that you're doing, to say, well, this person isn't doing this consistently and they keep doing it this way instead. So you want to stay consistent, because it says that, hey, this is our organizational practice and this is what we have to do. So attendance is very simple. To me, it seems ridiculous if you suspend somebody for an attendance issue. I'm not going to sit here and say that I didn't make that mistake, because I have. I remember I was working in an organization, and if they went through the steps, if they were written up 3 times, then we would suspend them, and then they would come back, and if they have one more issue, they would be gone. It was a little comical to me, because they're already missing work already, and they're showing up to work late, or they're just missing work, period. And then we're just going to suspend them for 3 days to let them think about it. It just didn't seem like it was a very worthwhile practice to go through. So hopefully when it comes to attendance, you leave it open to the fact that if we find that your attendance is not clearing up, and after we've given you ample amount of opportunities to fix this, we have the right to terminate your employment or skip any of these steps. We don't have to go through this progressive disciplinary process, but you also want to say, we're going to do our best to stick to these steps, but we have the right to bypass any of these steps if we feel that you're not improving. So that's attendance. The last one is performance. So the way that I handle this as a manager myself, I like to just have conversations. I like to say, hey, I noticed you didn't do XYZ correct. Let's talk about that, and let's find a way to make sure that that doesn't happen again in the future. Can you explain what your thoughts were as you were doing this? Can you explain your logic when you were going through this, just so I can understand? Because maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just assuming. So I like to leave it open to say, tell me exactly what you're doing and what you're hoping to accomplish. This way, my mind is open to the idea that, hey, this person may have did it this way because that seemed more correct to them, even though the policy put them in this narrow line that we were trying to stick them to. So to me, it's important that when you're dealing with performance, that you have a measurable item that you're dealing with. And if it's not measurable, you have to make sure that the expectations have been set clearly. At the same time, when I hear about people who get written up, or people who get kind of like they frame it as, I've been yelled at, or I've been told that I did something wrong, I'm like, well, were you communicated to about the proper procedure? Were you told about that procedure? Were you coached on it? Did you guys have an opportunity to understand what that was? One of the worst things that can happen when you're about to discipline somebody, or if you're about to fire somebody, is you say, well, we're firing you because you broke this rule. And it's like, if the employee said, well, I've never seen this and I never heard of this before, and then all of a sudden you discover that you fired somebody, but you never coached them on it, you never trained them on it, you actually never told them about it. There was just this unspoken rule that they were supposed to know about that nobody told them about. To me, you're just putting yourself up for more risk, especially for someone to sue you for, wrongful termination. And in this sue happy world, you always have to worry about somebody coming back on you. So it's important that you always find a way to make sure that that person knows what the expectations are. That's why, to me, progressive disciplinary makes the most sense, because you don't skip the steps. You don't skip telling the person what's wrong. You don't skip telling them the expectation either. More importantly, you've made a valiant effort to give that person the opportunity to correct their performance issue. If they don't correct it in a period of time, or if they keep making the same mistake over and over and over again, then you can go through those processes and you can confidently say, hey, when I terminated this person, I did everything I could to make sure I held on to this person. I personally don't like firing people like it's tomorrow's business, because that's not what it means to me. It means so much when I'm dealing with an employee that I care about and I want to see that they're doing well. I want to make sure that I'm putting every bit of effort into making sure I'm giving them everything they need to be successful. If you don't do that, I'm not saying you're a horrible person, but I'm saying you're leaving a lot of room for error, and you're leaving a lot of opportunity for somebody to come back on you and potentially sue your organization. So if your practice is just to start disciplining people and slapping their wrist when they do something wrong, you might need to step back for just a second and think about what you can do to potentially help your staff members out or to protect your employees. Now, it's not to say you need to go to the nth degree to make it worthwhile, but to me, what's the point of not doing it? What's the point of not giving chances? What's the point of not trying to coach, of explaining and training and going through re-explaining? If you don't do these things, you just make your organization that less effective. To me, when you bring a person in, it already costs so much money to recruit and bring a person in. I feel like I read an article on SHRM that said it takes, sometimes 2 to 3 times that person's salary just to bring them into the organization, just for that monthly basis. So you can imagine how expensive it is to have to re-recruit somebody. So why would you just pick somebody, bring them in, and then start disciplining them and then just kicking them out the door? It makes no sense to me. So from a performance standpoint, that's the most important key factors. Make sure you explain, make sure you coach, tell them what the expectation is. Don't assume that they know. Say, hey, on XYZ date, we had a conversation about this. Do you recall this conversation? If the employee says no, you could say, well, we documented it and we had this conversation with you, and you even signed off on this verbal warning, and we told you that this would be the last warning. To me, when you put yourself in a situation where you've documented, where you've had those conversations, you leave less room for error. And especially when things like unemployment come up or wrongful termination come up, it's a lot easier for you to be able to negotiate and, if anything, close the case, because nothing can be done. You've done everything you were supposed to do. So to me, those are the 3 most important pillars that you have to be aware of, especially when you're about to terminate somebody. So I hope these tips and tricks have helped you. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please like the video, and I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel. And I look forward to providing more valuable content in the future. Y'all take care.